Why did millions of Soviet citizens choose not to return home after World War II? Subscribe to our channel, folks, and drop your thoughts in the comments below. We're diving into a wild piece of history today, and we want to hear what you think. Share your reactions, family stories, or any insights you've got. Let's unpack this together. Hey there, American history buffs. Picture this. It's 1945. The smoke of World War II is clearing, and the Soviet Union is celebrating its hard-fought victory over Nazi Germany. But here's the twist. Not every Soviet citizen was rushing back to their homeland. Why would people who survived the horrors of war, captivity, and forced labor choose to stay in foreign lands, far from their families and the country they fought for? This is a story of survival, tough choices, and a world divided by politics and fear. It's not just about numbers, it's about real people facing impossible decisions. So, grab a coffee, settle in, and let's unravel this mystery together. World War II was a global catastrophe, but for the Soviet Union, it was a deeply personal tragedy. Millions of its citizens were caught in the crossfire, some taken prisoner, others forced to work for the Nazis, and a few even collaborating with the enemy. When the war ended, many of these folks didn't pack their bags to head back to the motherland. Instead, they scattered across Europe, the United States, and beyond, building new lives under new flags. Why did they stay? Were they traitors, victims, or just people trying to survive? Let's dive into this gripping tale and find out. When Nazi Germany invaded the Soviet Union in 1941, life for millions of Soviet citizens turned upside down. The Nazis swept through villages and cities, rounding up people to work in their war machine. These folks, known as Ostarbeiters or Eastern workers, numbered between 5 million and 5.5 million. That's a staggering figure. Imagine entire cities' worth of people forcibly shipped to Germany to toil in factories, mines, and fields. The Nazis didn't exactly roll out the red carpet for these workers. Ostarbeiters were treated as less than human, in line with Hitler's ideology that saw Slavic people as inferior. They worked grueling hours, often from dawn to dusk, on starvation rations. Many didn't survive the brutal conditions. Disease, exhaustion, and executions took a heavy toll. The Nazis didn't bother keeping detailed records of who lived or died, which makes it tough for historians to pin down exact numbers. But it's estimated that around 3 million of these workers survived until the war's end. Now, not everyone went to Germany against their will. Some were lured by Nazi propaganda promising better lives, food, and jobs. Imagine being a young guy in a starving Soviet village, hearing tales of prosperity in Germany. My great-uncle once shared a story about a neighbor who boarded a train shouting, "We're going to Germany," thinking it was a ticket out of poverty. Spoiler alert, it wasn't. Most found themselves in hellish conditions, regretting ever believing the lies. Then there were the collaborators, people who, for various reasons, worked with the Nazis as police, guards, or informants. These folks knew that going back to the Soviet Union meant facing harsh consequences. So many fled west with a retreating German army. The question is, how do you separate the victims from the opportunists? It's a blurry line, and one that still sparks heated debates among historians. By 1945, the Red Army was pushing back the Nazis, liberating Europe, and freeing millions of Ostarbeiters. You'd think these survivors would be overjoyed to return home, right? But for many, the idea of going back to the Soviet Union was terrifying. Why? Because the Soviet government, under Joseph Stalin, didn't exactly welcome them with open arms. In Stalin's eyes, anyone who'd been in Nazi territory, whether as a prisoner, worker, or collaborator, was suspect. The Soviet system was paranoid about betrayal, and returning citizens were often labeled as potential traitors. Propaganda leaflets dropped in German cities urged, "Come home to your motherland," to great Stalin. But behind those words was a grim reality. Many who returned faced interrogation, filtration camps, and even imprisonment in the notorious Gulag system. Imagine surviving years of hardship only to be told that your own country might punish you for it. For some, staying in Europe or moving to places like the United States, Canada, or Australia seemed like a safer bet. These weren't easy choices. Leaving meant abandoning family, culture, and everything familiar. But for many, the risk of returning was just too great. So, how many Soviet citizens decided to stay abroad? It's a tough question, and even today, historians don't have a clear answer. The Nazis didn't keep precise records, and after the war, the Allies had bigger fish to fry. But some data gives us a rough picture. According to Soviet records from 1946, 5,352,963 Soviet citizens were in Europe after the war. Only about 2 million were in areas controlled by the Soviets. By 1952, the Soviet Union managed to bring back 4,305,035 people, either voluntarily or by force. Do the math, and that leaves roughly 1,047,928 people who stayed abroad. This number doesn't account for those who died, and sadly, we'll never know the exact toll. Where do these folks go? Many settled in the United States, 35,500, the United Kingdom, 100,000, Australia, 50,500, Canada, 39,000, Argentina, 7,000, and West Germany, 85,000. Another 90,000 spread out across other European countries. Interestingly, people from eastern Ukraine and Belarus were more likely to return home. 8 out of 10 went back. But those from western Ukraine, the Baltics, and Moldova, they often chose to stay abroad, likely due to weaker ties to the Soviet system. After the war, the world split into two camps, the Soviet Union versus the West. This Cold War backdrop made Soviet defectors a hot commodity. Scientists, engineers, doctors, and teachers were welcomed with open arms in places like the United States and Britain. Why? Because their skills were a gold mine for rebuilding economies and advancing technology. Soviet official Lavrentiy Beria warned in 1945 that every defector could do more harm than 1,000 saboteurs back home. He wasn't wrong. The West benefited hugely from this brain drain. For example, the United States launched programs to integrate skilled Soviet immigrants who contributed to everything from aerospace to medicine. This wasn't just about jobs. It was a propaganda win for the West, showing that even Soviet citizens preferred capitalism. Meanwhile, the Kremlin downplayed the issue, labeling defectors as missing or fallen heroes to avoid admitting that anyone would choose the West over the socialist paradise. To understand why so many stayed, let's talk economics. The Soviet Union was in shambles after the war. Cities were rubble, factories were destroyed, and food was scarce. The government focused on rebuilding through strict central planning, but for ordinary people, this meant low wages, long hours, and constant shortages. Life was tough. Compare that to the West. The United States was riding a post-war economic boom, with jobs aplenty and a rising standard of living. In Europe, countries like West Germany got a boost from the Marshall Plan, pumping billions into reconstruction. By the 1950s, the U.S. GDP per capita was around $2,000, while the Soviet Union lagged far behind. For many Ostarbeiters, staying abroad offered a shot at stability, even if it meant starting from scratch. Of course, life in the West wasn't all roses. Immigrants faced prejudice, language barriers, and low-paying jobs. But for many, it was a better gamble than returning to a country where suspicion and hardship awaited. Let's zoom in on the human side. Picture a young engineer from Kiev, dragged to Germany in 1942. He survives the war, working in a factory, and now he's offered a job in Chicago. He knows going home might mean a one-way ticket to Siberia. What does he do? Or think about a woman from Belarus who lost her family in the war. She's offered a chance to start over in Canada. She's got no one left in the Soviet Union, but she's heard whispers of traitors being punished. What's her choice? These aren't hypotheticals. They're based on real stories. Every decision was a gamble, shaped by fear, hope, and the will to survive. As an American, it's easy to see why someone might choose the U.S., land of opportunity, right? But leaving everything behind took guts. The Soviet government went to great lengths to hide the scale of defection. Official reports called these people missing or heroes who died in battle. Admitting that thousands chose the West would have been a PR disaster for a regime claiming to be the world's best. Meanwhile, those who did return faced filtration camps where they were grilled about their loyalty. Some were cleared, but others weren't so lucky. Thousands ended up in the Gulag. This story isn't just about the past. It's about human resilience and tough choices. These Soviet citizens were caught between two worlds, a homeland that didn't trust them and a foreign land full of unknowns. Their decisions remind us how far people will go to find safety and freedom. For us in the U.S., it's a chance to reflect on what it means to offer refuge and opportunity to those escaping hardship. What a wild ride through history, right? The story of these Soviet non-returners is a reminder that behind every statistic is a human story. Want to dig deeper? The full 16,000-word version of this tale, packed with more reflections, economic analysis, and historical nuggets, is available in the linked artifact. Subscribe to our channel and drop a comment below. Tell us what you think. Did you know about this hidden chapter of World War II? Got any family stories from that era? Your voice matters, so join the conversation and let's keep history alive together.